here we have a little illustration so you guys have an idea. When we talk about density dependent factors, we're talking about factors or limiting factors that are directly connected with the amount of members in a population. So the amount of a populations or the amount of members in a population will affect the population, like for example, predation. But the other one that is the density independent factor is called independent factor because it doesn't matter how many members of that population you will have, it will still affect it. So natural disasters are a good example. Drought is a good example. It doesn't matter if you have few members or if you have a lot of members, it will always affect the population. So it's independent of the rest, while the other one depends on the quantity of population. So here we have some examples. In the density dependent factors that are according to the number of populations, the disease depends. Like for example, right now, the pandemic that we're having, we can see that the more concentration of people we have, the more spreading of the virus, right? So disease has to do with a density dependent factor. Competition. If they eat the same thing, there would be high competition to see who first get the resources. We would have predators and parasites. Also have to do with the amount of population. If they could go from one bison to another, we could have a population of ticks infecting some bisons. If we have food, the population will grow if we have enough resources or enough food, or how we're dispersed or crowded, right? So the greater the population, the greater the effect that these factors have. And they give you the example of the Black Plague in the Middle Ages, more death in cities because the concentration of the population was greater. We can see it with COVID right now. The greater the population, the more death. And then we have the density dependent factors that have to do with like natural disasters or things that it doesn't matter how many they are, like volcanic eruptions, like temperature, storms, flood, drought, chemical pesticides, right? And they give you an example of New Orleans. Most are abundant factors. So here we have, right? What is a density dependent factor? Weather events, fire, human, air and land, or water pollution. Density dependent factor, predation, disease, competition, and parasites. And we can see here an example of the year and the number of wolves, right? And number of moose. So the population and the competition had an effect according to the years, right? Now, there's other things that also affect the population. One of the things that we know that the population is being affected, it's how many are born and how many die. But also another thing that it's not taken in account, and it's very important, is the immigration and the immigration. Okay, so we have people that are being born, people that die, but also we have individuals, not only human beings, that move away from a population. Like, for example, right now we have seen a lot of caravans moving out of the country because of the economical situation. So when we move away, we're emigrating, right? And when we go into that country and become part of that population, we are called immigrants, and that purpose is called the immigration, right? So just remember this like this. If we see immigration with an E, that means that it's external, we're going out. And then immigration with an I, that means that we're coming into another population and being part of it. So we have two types of model. We have an exponential model and we have a logistic model. Now, population doesn't grow in a uniform or in a linear way. It usually grows gradually, and it's exponentially like a curve because we cannot manage how much people or how many other individuals or other species grow or die. So it's not a straight line, it's something that is curved, right? And it occurs proportionally according to the size. For example, we are one of the youngest populations in Latin America, and therefore we have a high population growth. So this is part of the exponential growth. When we have at the beginning of the population, it's a young population, we have sufficient resources, the population, it has stability, has homeostasis, and we can show a lot of growth, but it doesn't last for a long time, and it becomes part of another population model, which we call the logistic model, right? So what does a model do? It helps you study the characteristics of a population, right? So this is how the graph will see of an exponential growth function, okay? And then we're going to see the one of the logistic that we said it has plenty of room, plenty of water resources, predators, everything. And then we have the other one that is called the logistic model, right? That when we start like limiting the kind of resources and the population growth, birth decline, and death rises, right? Like in some countries of Europe where the reproduction is a little bit low. And for example, in China, they have a problem with overpopulation and having a lot of also people that have like an advanced age. So they're trying to figure out what to do with that. And it has to come with the study of exponential and logistic models. What's one thing that is very important? Carrying capacity. How much can that environment or that habitat can hold? That's very important to determine the possible population growth that we would have, right? So the carrying capacity is the number of organisms one species can support. And we're going to do a lab of this. Okay, this is our logistic. So you could see that this one is an S curve, right? Occurs when the population grows, slows, or stopped, right? And when the number of births is less than the number of deaths, or when immigration is greater than immigration. So this is where probably we're going to be at after the pandemic. How much we can hold, the capacity. And now we have two type of reproductive patterns, one that is R and one that is K. Now these two differ because of the type of organisms that represent each one. The R strategy are the ones in which usually the parents are not in charge of like taking care, and they can reproduce or mature rapidly, like in the case of the insects. And then we have the K strategy animals, that are those that they take care of their babies, and their development or reproduction is a little bit slowly. We could say that the humans and the elephants are part of it. So here we have a couple of pictures. See, we have insects and a couple of mammals, right? So what is the art strategy? Adapted for fluctuating environment, generally small, short lifespan, many offspring, and they spend little energy to raise their young. The K strategy, carrying capacity, adapted to stable environment, large, long lifespan, few offsprings, and invest more energy in their young. And we can see here like large bodies like elephants, we can see dolphins, and we can see the humans, right? So this is basically what we will be discussing on chapter 4, about how does a population growth, what affects it, the type of dispersion, and the strategies that the populations has. Next class. Thank you for watching.